Greetings, peace, love, and is to all. I swear to God, I mean that. Back at you one more again with just one good special I like to talk about. As I listen around on YouTube, I listen to a whole bunch of bull crap, a whole bunch of nonsense, a whole bunch of nothingness. But I am here today to tell you what I am here for. I am here to tell you about something that is very important to me. And the name of this show today is What Yasha Gained from Biblical Research and what it means to him to be an Israelite. What Yasha gained from biblical research and what it means to him to be an Israelite. Wow. Where do I start? I've been doing this stuff so long. It's like it took a lot. It was a very progressive movement. All right, but let's just stick to the topic. What did Yasha gain from biblical research? In order to understand what I've gained from biblical research, you have to understand me. You have to understand my life, how I was born, where I was born, the time that I was born, excuse me. You have to understand the time that I was born, the place the demographics all together. I was born in Detroit in the early 70s, right after, just at the end of the civil rights movement. I'm talking about like at the end of a sentence, you have a period. That is the era in which I was born. I was born at that period, the end of the civil rights movement. The black power movement. Yeah, I was born at that time. And you got to understand that I was born in the city of Detroit. The birthplace of the Nation of Islam. And at the time I was born, Coleman A. Young was the mayor. So I was born at a time when one of the most racist cities in the city of Detroit had finally won a black mayor. So most of my life, I was raised in the city of Detroit. And after what they call the white flight of the late 60s, after the riots, when whites and Europeans had left the community in the city of Detroit, that is the time frame in which I was born. Blacks didn't have much. They have more culture, more pride, more love, more respect, more morals, and more interhumane qualities than exterior. We didn't have much from the exterior qualities because most of us was fresh out of slavery. What I mean fresh out of slavery, we barely, with the time I was born, we barely 100 years out of slavery. Okay. And I was born in a city where blacks didn't have much on the exterior, but on the interior, these blacks were monumental. Okay. And enough with that, though. And I wanted you to know that I was born in a city and raised in a city where it was all black. What does that mean? In the 70s, blacks didn't have much, right? All we had was dreams, ambitions, morals, and God for the most part. And that carried us very, very far. So, as a young child, I would say in the late 70s, my uncle, he was a drug addict, a heroin addict, right? And I believe it was around 77 he experienced the Pentecostal movement. And the Pentecostal movement took this young man that was on drugs for 15 years. You know, I got enough time. I want to tell y'all the whole story. It took this young man, my uncle, his name was Thomas Goldberg. He was on heroin from the time he was like 14 up until, I would guess, maybe his early 20s, his early to mid 20s. He got strung out on heroin, and somehow this young man used to pass this Pentecostal church. And as he passed the Pentecostal church, when he was down and out, these people would take care of him and they would show him godliness. So when he got tired of the streets and the drug life, he ran to the Pentecostal church looking for this God that they were talking about. And Thomas Goldberg, my Uncle Bino, got saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost, as they called it, from the Pentecostal church. You have to understand that this young man was strung out on heroin, strung out, and he threw away those drugs. Okay? He threw away those drugs. This man was always a working man because he started working at Chrysler when he was like 17. So he always had a job. He was on drugs. I mean, just doing bad. But he still had a job. He got to dealing with those sanctified folks, those Pentecostal folks, and they were doing what they were called tarrying for the Holy Ghost. Now, what that has to do with me? Well, it was this uncle who got saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost according to the doctrine of the Pentecostal movement. And this man had a 360-degree change in his life. He got married. He ended up buying a home. In fact, he ended up he ended up buying 2 or 3 homes. He just started doing well. He got married. He had children. But his life ended up getting cut short. What that has to do with anything? It was this uncle that brought the Pentecostal faith to my family. And we're talking like the late 70s, 77. At 77, I could only have been maybe 4 or 5 years old. And I remember the impact of this godliness that my uncle brought to my family. No one received it well but my grandmother. My grandmother would often pray that if a God took her son off of drugs, she would serve him. She constantly prayed that the Lord take her son off of these drugs. Well, my uncle ended up getting taken off of those drugs. And he ended up living a saved life. And I remember throughout the years how they would have Bible class over to my grandmother's house. And as a young man, 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, right? just intrigued at these older men and women talking about this God stuff, right? So later on, we move out of the neighborhood. Grandmother ended up passing away. Now things get crazy because I'm born in a neighborhood that was ran by Demetrius Holloway, the biggest drug dealer, if not the biggest, certainly in the top three biggest African American drug dealers in the city of Detroit. I grew up in a house on Shane and Garfield, right across the street from the 18th hole, which was a, 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 a hub, basically, a private hub that Demetrius Holloway sold lots and lots and lots of drugs out of. We're talking about a guy that was making hundreds of millions of dollars in the 80s. And Demetrius Holloway brought forth this group called the Best Friends, right? Now, y'all saying what this has to do with biblical research. I have to understand, get y'all to understand what I had to gain from biblical research, right? So, as I grew up, you go through your teenage years, I'm living in a city, in a neighborhood, in an environment that is dominated by guys like Johnny Curry, that is dominated by guys like Big Ed Hansard, dominated by guys like Demetrius Holloway, controlled and enforced by men like Leonard and Michael Riley, controlled and enforced by guys like Steve Washington, controlled and enforced by guys like Clifford Jones and the Monster Crew, right? People always tell me, man, you shouldn't be talking about this stuff, man. But I have to talk about these things to show you, to get you to understand what I have gained from biblical research, right? Guys like Big Ed, guys like Chemical, right? Guys like Burt Gregg, y'all forgot about him. You know, guys like David Lemons. I grew up around some of the most dangerous African American killers in the history of African Americans. All right. And some of these men, like the Best Friends and the Monster Crew, is people that you have to really be careful to talk about. More so the Monster Crew than anybody, right? The Monster Crew is your toe tag Tommies, and you know the Lester Brown, Milton, you know Lester Milton, them, those guys, the guys who killed Demetrius. I grew up in the midst of that, and you talking about I was influenced by the men who killed Demetrius, the men who Demetrius hired to kidnap him. Why? You got to understand that I was born on Garfield and Shane. Actually, I was born on Hancock and Moran, and then we moved on Garfield and Shane. Right behind Mr. Kelly's, directly behind Mr. Kelly's. This is the early 70s, right? Right across the street from the 18th hole, before Demetrius ever even bought this place. What I'm telling you is that I was hood established. All of these men, your white boy Ricks, Chemical, Gary, Terry, You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying no last name. The gays and the tays. You know, I grew up around all these people. And I'm going to tell you what I've gained from biblical research now that I've gotten all of that out of the way. Because remember, I had a spiritual connection first through my grandfather and my grandmother and my uncle, through the Pentecostal church. So as I began to grow up and to learn and to understand my environment, right? I never understood growing up that I was around some of the nation's most notorious gangsters. When you talk about Detroit, Detroit had a level of gangsterism. Didn't talk that. Hold on for a second. Yeah, I had to move my PC because the battery is low. I failed to charge the battery. So, what have I gained from this? You're talking about a young African American male, right? Who don't know who he is, where he come from. Only thing that he knows that he come from is this group of people called his family. That's all he knows. African Americans, he see the degradation and the berating of his people. Young man, he don't understand. He confused. He don't know. So I gets caught up in the street mentality, right? Mind you, out of all of those gangsters, remind you, your boogaloos, your best friends, right? Remind you, your Johnny Currys, right? Your Eddie Jacksons, right? None of those men influenced me like guys like Leonard Riley, Michael Riley, Clifford Jones, and Steve Washington. Because everybody else was caught up on the bandwagon of selling the drugs. When these four men who I've mentioned were the most notorious, deadliest men, most fear-filled, and I'm talking about on the other side of them, men, right, that the history of Detroit has ever known. Three of those men are dead and gone because they were very, very dangerous men. And they end up dying the way that they lived. Mind you, all four of those men I grew up with and knew them personally, right? I just want to talk about what biblical research has done for me, right? If you don't understand the me part, you wouldn't understand not the Bible, but what the research has done for me. I grew up as a young thug, influenced by killers, wanting and dreaming to be the dope man, the hit man. More so the hit man than the dope man. All of my friends at 14, 13, we had street pipe dreams. And we were very serious about these street pipe dreams, right? At least some of us was. In fact, all of us was. It just took one to lead. 14 years old, my friend Angelo Brooks was driving around with his little motorcycle, mini bike, or whatever. He had a Camaro Z28. He had a Mercedes Benz. He bought his own home. We talking about like 14, 15 years old. My best friend, you talk about a group called the Best Friends. Mind you, that I grew up in the neighborhood that Demetrius Holloway put together because we didn't have gangs back then. Our gangs were our friends because we all was best friends. We grew up together. We slept together. We ate together in each other's houses. My mama know your mama. Your mama know my mama. Type thing. We really know each other. My homeboy became competitive. We talking about in his teens before he came 20 years old. He was competitive in these streets to all of those big name drug dealers that I told you about. And this was my best friend, right? I wanted to sell the drugs and this and that, but I knew that that was wrong. And I wanted it at first. When my mother saw all of my friends, all of them selling dope, right? All of them. Everybody wasn't even fortunate. Only a handful of the guys, like the leaders, like Angelo and those other named guys, they were fortunate because they had that mind. All the rest of us were just followers, man. And they ended up following Angelo, Juso. Me and Juso used to have real pipe dreams because before Angelo started getting into that world, me and Juso dabbled in it first. And we was fooling around with guys like Jeff Benson, right? We're fooling around with guys like Kevin Duplessis, right? We talking 13, 14 years old, man. 12, 13, 12 to 14. I wouldn't even say 15. Because by the time I was 15, my mother saw what my friends was doing and took the responsibility of a mother and moved me up out of that neighborhood. Almost pretty much like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air story, where my mom got scared and she moved me to another part of town called Bel-Air. Well, my mother moved me from the Black Bottom all the way to Mac Ave. She moved me from one ghetto to the next. The difference was that I didn't have connections to this in this new ghetto that I had in the old. And I was too attached to the old ghetto that I didn't want to learn these new niggas. Mind you, you dealing with a guy that's 14 years old. So by the time I turned like 15, 16, right? I would say by the time I turned 16, I decided that I no longer wanted to live this street life. Mind you, that I wanted to be a killer. I wanted to be a hitman. I wanted to be a murderer, right? I wanted to be the guy who paid to knock off the dope men because I knew all of them and I knew where they stayed. I knew that I wasn't scared of those men. All y'all was terrified of those guys. I'm like, man, this motherfucker, y'all see him as what the news portrayed him as and what the media portrayed him as. I saw them as the nigga across the street or the Negro around the corner. And I say nigga, I mean Negro, right? I saw him as that. So what did I gain from biblical research? About 15, right? No, about 16. I start to get away from all of that foolishness because my mother moved me to a new neighborhood. Now, she moved me from a neighborhood that was ran by the Monster Crew, that was ran by Demetrius Holloway, to a neighborhood that was ran by Johnny Curry. And we lived in the house that was Johnny Curry's hitman's mama's house, the Riley family on St. Clair. We lived in Leonard and Michael Riley's house that they was raised in. We lived in their mother's house. Okay. I'm telling you what I know. So we moved from one trap to the next. Then, even before that, during the time when my grandmother was living, and she and my uncle was introducing me to religion and spirituality. It was at that time the big Ed Hansard and the Chambers brothers was running all of the drugs and the street activity going forth over there off of East Jefferson. So as a kid, I used to steal guns from members of Big Head's clique. And I would take these guns over to the Black Bottom to get rid of guys that was my enemies that was beefing against Angelo's now. See, I was turning into that hitman, that influence. You're talking about 14, 15 years old. 14, 15 years old, we saw more money. We saw more drugs. And thanks to me, we saw more guns. And my friends were just hustlers. They were just trying to get money. I was the guy, just like I am with this Israelite and this biblical knowledge, just spreading it and strengthening the people. I was letting people know, look, blood, we connected with some people y'all don't understand, man, by way of me. And my friend Angelo knew it. I was Angelo's arm out here. Long as I was over there in the hood, Angelo ain't had to worry about nothing. All he had to do was call me, and we gonna get him gone. You know, I was the get him going man. I was the problem solver man. Thank God that my mother beat me, put me on the punishment, and by the end of my punishment, she put me on the punishment for the whole summer. And by the end of that summer, we moved into a whole nother neighborhood. Now, in this neighborhood, you know, while I was on a punishment, the only place that I could go to, it was for the summer now. The only place that I could go to was run errands for her, like to the store, to the market, or the church, right? So my house was the hangout house. My mother couldn't punish me bad enough, you know, hard-headed, because all my friends hung out at my house right there on, what was it, 1054 Mitchell or something like that. That house was the hangout house. So when my mother would put me on the punishment, right, I didn't have to do nothing but just open up. My room was upstairs. I opened up my upstairs room window, and my block was the hangout block. So because I couldn't come outside, I didn't miss nothing. All I had to do was open up the window. You know what I'm saying? I looked outside and I saw it was hip to everything. You know, and when my mother blinked her eyes, I had a little spot in the back where I could climb out of the back window, climb downstairs, and go outside and hang out with my friends when my mother didn't know it. Lots of drugs, lots of violence, lots of jealousy, hatred, envy. Right? We leave the hood, and now, mind you, that I ain't able to do nothing but go to church for the most part. So bump it, you know, since I got my man Lee Allen Cobb, his mother Carolyn, and his grandmother, Miss Rosetta Cobb, a jewel. And I'll never forget that woman a day of my life. They would come and pick me up for service. And they found out that I was a musician, right? So I started playing the drums at the church. I started loving going to church. So now it goes from going to church on Sunday to going to church on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And basically the only thing that I had freedom to do up under my mother was to go to damn church. You got to understand that my mother's friend called my mother, and let her know that me and her son were stealing guns. and who we were stealing them from. Mama, all of those people I knew because I was raised in the hood. Those people is up in my mother's age bracket. Those gangsters. My mother knew all of them because we were the neighborhood. We all knew each other. You know, I may not know who did the crime, right? Put it like this: I may know the guy who did the crime, but I didn't know he did the crime. I may know the guy, but I didn't know he did the crime. You see, and that's the situation that we was living in the hood. Everybody knew everybody, and everybody was family. Everybody was close knit. You know, I could tell you stories about Steve Washington and me. I could tell you stories about Leonard Riley and me. You know what I'm saying? I could tell you stories about Chemical and me. You know what I'm saying? I could tell you stories about some of them cats, man. You know, I grew up with these guys. What that got to do with anything? What I have gained from biblical research is that I was this young guy who had nothing on the road to nowhere. You understand what I'm saying? On the road to create death, hell, danger, and destruction in the African American community. And I'm sure that my mother's friends, her girlfriends, who had babies by these thugs, gangsters, and killers, used to tell my mother that she's raising me to be a little punk because she forced me to go to church. You know, rest in peace, DeJuan Kelly. I made a rap song where I said DeJuan Kelly, Louis Bates, and then Renzo. It's hard to say goodbye and it's hard to see your friends go. It was my first song I ever released on record. It was a song called Child of the City. And today I've seen DeJuan Kelly go. I've seen his brother Andre go a couple months ago. And we just buried his baby brother Reggie the other day. And these were the street people, okay? These were the peoples who moms would clown my mother and say that she was raising a punk. But today, that's Renee Kelly. Rest in peace, my baby. I'll always love you. Renee Kelly is gone. DeJuan Kelly. It hurted me when DeJuan Kelly got killed. DeJuan Kelly got killed in the crack house where he was like 14, 15 years old. And it made the Detroit News and the newspaper. It hurted us. It hurted me. It hurt Renee. It hurt my mother. It hurt my family. Because we was all raised together. But as the time grew on, them young boys got more serious in them streets, and my mother protected me from that. I couldn't do nothing else but go to church. I ended up becoming the church drummer. And from becoming a church drummer, I ended up playing for many great gospel singers. I'm talking about, I'll name them. I've played the drums for Karen Clark. And Mike Brooks was on the organ right there on Dubay and Van Dyke. In Oscar Hayes' church, I played the drums for Oscar Hayes. I played the church drums for Michael Fletcher. I've played the drums at St. James Missionary Baptist Church. I played the drums at Second Ebenezer Baptist Church. I've played the drums for Kenneth Wilson. I've played the drums for Evangelist Esther Smith. I've played the drums for jazz artist Donald Brown, who happened to have been my jazz instructor at Knoxville College. So I'm saying that I took this music thing and this gospel thing, you know, and then I end up becoming a preacher, a minister in the church, right? And it was then that I began to start advancing and growing. You're talking about now I'm in a Pentecostal church. I'm maybe in my late 19 now, as a preacher, 19, 20. Young man that left the streets alone. All my boys out here thriving, they living. Angelo dead, Steve dead, Juan dead, Andre dead, Reggie dead. My nigga Pee Wee, he's supposed to be getting out. He just did 30. Eric Cameron, my homeboy, first guy I started playing with guns with. We talking about 11 years old, 10, 11 years old. Eric did a 30, came out dead. All these guys did time fooling around under the drug regime of Demetrius Holloway. Well, not all of them. The latter, the Kellys didn't. They didn't get involved in that. They were doing their own thing out here. But still, the streets end up taking them under. DeJuan Kelly, Louis Bates, and DeRenzo, it's hard to say goodbye, and it's hard to see your friends go. Hit that like button, y'all, and that subscribe. Most importantly, hit that subscribe if you think I'm talking some real talk. So, I was raised in that world, right? So to the point to where when I went to King High School, I walked up in there my first day of school. I'm about to be the freshest, baddest nigga up in there. I probably walked into King High School. I had some gear that was given to me by the dope man. Silk shirts, leather suede, leather pants, suede shirts. I mean, just crazy shit that the average guy wouldn't wear. You know what I'm saying? Either wear this or wear what my mama bought me, and I'm not going to be happy with the things my mother. My mother was still trying to make me wear Garanos and shit. Excuse my English. But it's a positive message at the end of the day. So I go forward, go to school, King High School, and Dr. Robinson, which was the principal. And mind you, after we moved out of Black Bottom and we moved to St. Clair, Dr. Robinson lived right up the street. The principal of my high school lived right down the goddamn street. Now that is something. Because it's goddamn, this God cursed because I didn't understand it. I was the guy that was in the dark on everything. Dr. Brown saw me coming in there with my attache because I used to listen to that hip hop, sophisticated, a Public Enemy, Chuck D. When he say, she don't what Chuck D say? He say, she only want a man with an attache. And if she don't like it, she'll tell you. If she don't, hold up. She only want a man with an attache, and if she don't like you, she'll turn you away. She only wants a man that's true and black. If you're light, you're all right, brother. You stay black. Well, I was the light-skinned brother with the attache. See, back in the day, the attache was the drug dealer thing. He had his little briefcase, and you know what I'm saying? That was his business in the briefcase. So they had the briefcase, the cell phone. Y'all don't understand what that briefcase. That if you walking around and you carry the case in the briefcase, that meant that you was about that work. If you wore them Dickie outfits, you know what I'm saying? That Detroit brought that stuff out. Wasn't nobody wearing that stuff like that. Detroit had them Dickie outfits. That if you wore the Dickie outfits, it signified that you about that money. The Dickie outfits, But I wasn't wearing no Dickie outfits. I had them, but I wasn't wearing them to school. I was wearing fresh stuff. Like I was going to the dope man's ball or something. Mr. Robinson pulled me over. He saw me the first day that I entered into King High School, and he told me, he said, "Look, man, I'm gonna talk to you." He pulled me over to the side, took me in his office, and sat me down in the office. He said, "I don't know you. This your first day here." He said, "The way that you're dressing, I am not tolerating that here in King High School." And he said, "I don't ever want to see you dressed like that again coming into my school." I came in there like Run DMC or somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like I came up in King High School looking like Slick Rick. So now I can't wear none of the stuff that the drug dealer gave me. You know what I'm saying? I'm just making this is going to be a nice story, y'all. Just hear me out. This is what YouTube is for. So I had to make this choice. Now you're talking about I'm like in the 10th grade now. Cause the school I went to, which was Newton Junior High School, right there in the Black Bottom, right down the street from the 18th hole, like 5 blocks, maybe, actually like 4 blocks, 3, and just the influence. I never sold none of the drugs. I got to hold all the guns though. You best believe that. But I never sold any of the drugs, for some mysterious reason. This is a young man. But going back to the King High School story, Mr. Brown, Principal Brown, I'm not Principal Robinson, my bad. Principal Robinson. I'm still thinking about the Browns because that was the best friend era. Uh, Principal Robinson, after he told me what he told me, I was faced with, because my mother, I just wanted to look like I was out here. I didn't really want to do nothing. I just wanted to look good, pretty boy. You know, I didn't want to sell no drugs. I didn't want to kill nobody or nothing. If I had the choice which one I wanted to do, sell drugs or kill somebody, I probably would have killed somebody. Because I was a little aggressive, mean little dude, I was the type of dude that by the time I was in the 3rd grade, I was stabbing kids with pencils and, any guy. I was a little bitty runt guy. So any guy that wanted to fight me, I would do dirty things to them in the fight to let them know that you started this. This is what you end up with. And I just mean little something, so I didn't have to do much fighting. People knew who we was connected with, who we was. So I didn't have to worry about a whole lot of nothing. I did get into fights, beefs, battles, but they nothing more than they never got really, really serious. They could have, but they didn't because we were too young and I wasn't as powerful as I would have been if I would have stayed in that situation. But I was faced with the choice of having to wear all of these fancy clothes or to go back to the Garanimal style clothing that my mother bought for me, you know. So I had to go back to the Garanimal style clothing. And even in that, my mother wasn't rich, so I wasn't getting shoes as often. Maybe 1 or 2 pairs of shoes throughout the whole fucking school year. So I had to just humble all the way down. In this humbling down, my mother moved towards Mac Ave, Mac and St. Clair. Music is my love because before in the Black Bottom I had already started to rap. I started to record. Me and Derek Palmer, DJ Fingers, also known as Christopher Price, which was the DJ for FM 98. Right after the Wiz, him and the Wiz was the two biggest DJs. Me, all of us grew up in the Black Bottom together. We was recording together at Derek Palmer's house, so I was already rapping. I was already in the music world. I gets to the church world. I started playing the drums And I don't know how I didn't realize that Thomas Whitfield, my uncle, was the biggest gospel fucking legend in the world. So now I'm raised around the gospel legends, the fucking street legends. You know what I'm saying? And I'm torn between two worlds. I started to take the gospel serious, becomes a minister. I graduate from King High School. I get into the ministry. I graduate from King High School. Not not fully a minister, but a minister in practice, right? I goes to college. I graduate from King High School with like a point four grade point average. I didn't even get a D. And I graduated from King High School. Mind you, that year, Mr. Robinson and them were turning King High School into one of the most prestigious schools in the state of Michigan. And that's why they couldn't tolerate me coming in there with that mentality or just perpetuating that foolishness. So I had men all my life to you we can't have that from you. Even if they didn't know me, somehow I just and I humbled to those things. I started playing in the church. I started learning the scriptures. I started learning the Bible. Mind you, I graduated from King High School with a point four grade point average, failing in history, failing in English, right? Failing in mathematics, English. How the hell you gonna fail in English and that's the only language that you know? You don't know no other language, but you got a D in English. And that's probably my highest grade. History, straight F. Home economics, anything, I didn't care. I just went to school to look good and to be around the girls. And there was three guys that looked alike in my school. It was me, three light-skinned redhead guys. Me, Christopher Price, and Lateef Shakur, Judge Adam Shakur's son. And all three of us, everybody called us brother. They just made us brothers. Chris used to come to me all the time and say, "That's my little brother right there." You know what I'm saying? And years later, Chris ended up leaving that crazy world, and just kept focused on his craft. Today, Christopher Harris is a profound DJ. I mean, he cuts and scratches gospel music. He actually did a concert with Fred Hammond, exit the band, and just him cutting and scratching in Fred's music. Something you've never seen before. That was my DJ. I grew up and went to King High School with men like Seti. What this got to do with anything? Well, when I knew Seti, I was just coming into the gospel. I was making that transition from the street to the gospel. So Seti saw both sides. Seti saw me coming in there as a knucklehead, and then before we left, I would end up walking the halls with my Bible, right? I'm walking the halls with my Bible, and just believing in the Lord. I learned so much, in those days because while I'm out playing in the drums in the churches and we having revivals, and I love playing. And I'm like, I'm Thomas Whitfield nephew. I love playing for the churches. Especially as a kid, we did it for free. We didn't ask for nothing. That was like first priority. Like that's what I want to be, the church drummer. And that was one of my first accomplishments ever, right? Now we talking church now. What have I had to gain from studying the Bible? From studying the Bible, I became a musician. From studying the Bible, I am I'm 2 credits short from my bachelor's degree in history, right? Uh, from studying the Bible, I've learned how to speak Arabic. I've learned how to speak Hebrew. From studying the Bible, I became a supreme intellectual, believe it or not. I know that you all hear the street talk and the street lingo, but I have become an intellectual because I graduated from one of the most prestigious high schools in Detroit at the time that it was making this conversion from being a very thugged out school to a nerd school. Today, King High School is a nerd school. King High School, Cash Tech, and Renaissance is the smartest schools in this whole area. And I graduated from the bottom, which happened to be a blessing. I didn't ask for that. The Lord just happened to place me in that. You understand that transition? And that transition, as King High School was transitioning, I was transitioning as well. Because there was guys in King High School that was a part of the class of 1989. If you was a part of 1989 or any of that, any person that came in that was not a part of 1990, they was making the class of 1990. They were you're going to graduate, and you're not going to be no 20-year-old graduate. See, before 1990, King was graduating kids at 18, 19 years old because kids wanted to fool around and play around in high school and just didn't want to graduate. Just foolishness, you know. So King High School got rid of that, and I was a part of that transition. And in that transition, I picked up the Bible. You're talking about a guy who got D's, E's, and C's at best in English. And now I speak 2, 3, working on 4 and 5 languages. This is what I have gained from learning the Bible. This is what I have gained from researching the Bible. Because before I picked up that Bible, I could never tell you or even think that I could have ever have been on graduating. I didn't care about high school. During my high school years, it was during the Demetrius Holloway years. I was concerned about the streets and what my friends were doing. Young man. My man didn't care about it. I didn't see how learning about George Washington could ever make me no money. And here I am on YouTube making money talking about George Washington, talking about history, talking about Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Malcolm X, talking about Napoleon Bonaparte, talking about Jesus Christ, talking about Moses, talking about things that I have learned by way of reading literature and history. My, oh my, what biblical research has done for me. I remember before I was homeless, at best I could rent a apartment or a house or something, right? Today, after biblical research, I understand the power of God and the power of God's servants and his children. And today I am a homeowner. I remember walking. Today I drive a BMW. I've owned Cadillacs. Man, I'm just trying to tell you. So I've gained much more of a virtue and a value and a quality of life from biblical research. And you're talking to a guy who remember living at some point in this life where he had no knowledge. No knowledge. No knowledge of the Bible whatsoever. You understand? No knowledge of the Bible, didn't care about Egypt, didn't care about Ethiopia, didn't care about Mesopotamia, didn't care about Assyria, right? I didn't care about none of those things. I didn't care about nothing that was going on in the world, you know? Before I read the Bible, I didn't even know that Egypt was in Africa. Could you believe that? Before I read the Bible, Before I studied and understood the Bible, I didn't even know that Egypt was in Africa. I would have better off thought it was on the moon before I would have thought Egypt was in Africa, right? Before I read the Bible, it was the Bible that taught me that Ethiopia was the very first in Assyria, the very two first nations written in the scriptures, in the Bible. This is what biblical research has taught me. You talking about a guy who went from knowing about street shit, and I'm talking about trash, garbage, about who killed who stole the birds from who, you know, who just bought what, who just had a baby by who, all this old dumb stuff that just didn't amount to nothing but the chaos and negativity. This is what biblical research has done for Yashab in Israel. This is what biblical research has done for Terry Whitfield. It changed me into a completely different person. It has given me liberty. It has given me freedom. Because liberty comes with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. You understand? We all are free. We all are liberated. But many of us still, as African Americans especially, still have chains of slavery to our minds, to our beings. We don't know what it is to be free. We don't know what it is to be sovereign inside of a free society. We don't know what it is to be the sons and daughters of God. As African Americans, I thought that we was pimps. I thought that we was whores. I thought that we was gangsters, thieves, killers, murderers, drug dealers, extortioners, liars, game players, game runners. Oh, if you didn't have game, you didn't have nothing. But the Bible and biblical research taught me, no, Terry, you had it wrong. If you don't have knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, you don't have nothing. The Bible taught me that eating pork is dangerous. That eating catfish and shellfish is dangerous. Some of the most highly cholesterol foods. Black African Americans love it. And no wonder why we have high blood pressure, diabetes, hypertension, and other diseases bigger than anybody on the planet, because we consume the things that do that to you. And all of these things the Bible told you not to eat. All of my friends that I have grown up with are dead. I want to say that they're all in jail, but being that they didn't all did, this is about a 30-year run for them in prison. All of my friends that are not dead are getting out of prison. And guess what? They're getting out of prison just so they can come out here and die right in these streets. You don't believe me? Ask my friend Eric Cameron. He died last year. Did 30 years in the streets. I talked to Eric. Eric was telling me some things, man, about that when he was in jail, he saw a Boogaloo, and he questioned Boogaloo about, man, why you killed my boy Chemical, and I didn't kill Chemical, Ed killed Chemical, all of this crazy shit. You know what I'm saying? And I say shit because it's foolishness, it's trash, it's garbage, it's negativity. I can't call it goodness or greatness or righteousness, or even sugar. We compare shit, and that is boo-boo, right? I am trying to clean it up, y'all, for YouTube, because I'm trying to take this thing to this next level. So you got this young African American man, right? who have went from being a dummy, a bona fide dummy. I say bona fide because all you got to do is check my records. We got Cassandra Ruskay in the house. Hallelujah. How are you, Cassandra? We got Tashaka O'Kelly in the house. I'm over here just preaching and going, and I've been going for about an hour now, and I haven't seen anybody in the chat. I'm just going and going. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Cassandra Ruskay. Blessings now. What's that? Blessings now. Do you happy? Yes, yes. Let the blessings do me happy. And I pray, Cassandra Ruskay, that the blessings do you happy. This is not a racist program. You know, when I am one who talks intellectually, and I am one that challenges anyone, because when I was coming to the Christian movement, and this is some of the things that biblical study and research has done for me. I had no idea that Africans were in the Bible at all. Right? I had no idea that Africans were in the Bible at all. And the Bible, biblical research taught me that Africans are human beings and they've been around a long, long time. It gave me a sense of self-respect, pride, honor, dignity. It made me understand that I am somebody in a world and in a society that taught me and my people that we were nothing, you know? And that's what the Bible has done for me. I think that myself, first off, more than anyone, think any type of God, if there is a God, right? And I say if there is for those who swear up and down that it ain't. There is a God. This God is this L. You're dealing with power, right? You're dealing when you say words like Eli. Eli is my power, not my God. My power, my strength. And learning the Bible taught me how to believe in myself. It taught me how to believe in my power, my strength. It taught me to not look at myself as you ain't nothing, your mama ain't nothing, your daddy ain't nothing, your community ain't nothing. Look at your race. Even your race ain't nothing. You was destined not to be nothing. The Bible taught me that anybody that has this type of mentality towards especially African American people were wrong and that they were in error. And I'm saying this because I perpetuated that mentality before I read the Bible. Hey, my daddy was a gangster. I wanted to be a gangster. My daddy was a head buster. I wanted to be a head buster. My daddy wasn't nothing to play with out in these streets, and I didn't want to be nothing to play with out in these streets. See the silliness and the goofiness that I was perpetuating. My daddy didn't read the Bible until he went to prison. After he'd spent 10 years and locked up in a jail. Maybe the second time he did a 10 piece. you know? So I have gained much from reading the scriptures. I have learned how to stay steadfast from reading the scriptures. You say possibly the very first people. You're right, Cassandra Ruskay, and that's why I'm saying that on this channel, I made an announcement that I am not going to perpetuate the silliness and the goofiness that the so-called Black Hebrew Israelite movement is perpetuating. I am here to just talk about knowledge, wisdom, understanding, intellect, and to bring things that are going to uplift humanity at large. And knowing that like you said, could possibly be the very first people. See, that's wisdom and intellect and knowledge. And that's the type of understanding that I want to bring to the world, because it will stop the black and the African Americans from looking at himself as the gangster, the thug. Look at yourself that you possibly could have been the son of great kings and queens and sages and things like that. And maybe you will perpetuate a different outcome. You know, all of this comes from just the berating and the oppression of my people, and being oppressed. It is through the scriptures that I found freedom. It is through the scriptures that I learned that I am not what you say I am. I am what God said that I am. And God said that I am his son. Way before Israel was born, there was the Benai Elohim, the sons of God. Human beings are the children of the Most High God. Shalom. You got Torah Tori in the house. He even changed his name to Torah Tori. Hallelujah. I'm over here just talking about the things that I have gained just in my personal. I mean, I don't know where I know. I'm not going to tell that lie. I know exactly where I would be if it wasn't for biblical research. You know what I'm saying? I knew I would be in jail, or I would be in somebody's prison or penitentiary, because I wanted to be like what America had gave me without God, the life of men, a masculinity without God. You know, Scarface wasn't an African American, but he was a gangster and a drug dealer. Al Capone wasn't an African American, but he was a gangster. You know, when I looked at Batman and Robin, when I looked at the Bruce Lee movies, it was always you had the superheroes engaged in physical fights against bad guys. So you had America perpetuating fighting and violence, letting me know that there was going to be a fight and a struggle between good and evil, even as a child. Who would ever stop to think that Bruce Lee in the movie The Chinese Connection was a good guy hired by the American government to take down, was it the Chinese a heroin cartel? You see, this is the life that they perpetuated for young men like me, especially when I stood over Maserati Rick's casket. I saw that casket. My physical body stood over Maserati Rick's casket and saw that man laying in that grave in that BMW, I mean that Mercedes Benz. Right there on Mac Avenue. I told y'all I lived on Mac Ave, right around on St. Clair, which is right around the corner from the street that the church that the man was buried in. I wasn't even intended to go to Maserati Rick funeral. What happened was my mother ended up sending me to the grocery store. It's a grocery store right across the street. And I seen I'm like, hold up. This Rick funeral over here? You know, I thought that they was going to have it somewhere else. So I walked in and paid my respects. And I stood over him, looked at him, you know, and I'm telling y'all this story because, and I'm going to have some of these gangsters on here and some of their relatives and family and friends to validate my story. You know, now that we get monetized, certain gangsters I'm gonna have to stay away from, because some of them guys out here still out here, and some of these guys still ain't playing. You know what I'm saying? So, but I learned what not to be. I learned morals, right? I learned what's really right from what's really wrong. You know, uh, like I said, I learned a plethora of intellectual disciplines. I mean, I swear it wasn't until I began to become serious in the Bible that I began to soar in college. I graduated at the bottom of one of the best high schools in Michigan. because I didn't have no God in me. I didn't care. Like I said, I didn't understand how learning about George Washington and Frederick Douglass and Benjamin Franklin could ever get me no money. I felt like put me in wood shop, show me how to build something, show me how to make something that I can make and sell. If put me in home economics or something, even in cooking class or something. Show me how to cook something. Show me how I can make something that I can sell. If you can't show me how I can make money directly from your knowledge, I didn't want to learn it. And that was the ignorance on my part. And that was coming from the part of a man a young human being who didn't care or understand the Bible. It was biblical research that changed my whole entire life. Now, I want to say this before I get out of here, and I want to talk about what it means to be an Israelite, right? What it means to me to be an Israelite. What it means to be an Israelite first is to be a representative of God on earth. Number one, in my biblical research and the learning and the studying of the Hebrew Israelite language, right, or language, the word Israel is Yasha'al. Yashra'al. It's three words in one. Yasha'al. Yashar, Yahi, Shar, king or rule, right, or governor, or even a prince, right? That's what a shar is, like a governor, a ruler, a prince, right? So it's he, Yah, Yah is he, Shar will rule, right? El, Yasha El, he will rule as El, he will rule for El on this earth. So the name of Yah and the name of Israel itself is a perfectionist walk, right? It is a walk that represents the man of God, if not God himself, on this earth. He is not evil. He is not wicked. He is not sexually deviant. You understand? Sister Cassandra Rusky say, I appreciate you sharing knowledge and I'm always learning. Yes, that's what this page is going to be about. And I have to, because, when I first came onto YouTube, and you can go and look through my catalog, I have about 400, close to 400 videos. And I think I meant well, but because of my background, I had a lot of the street rough around a collar edge, and I thought that was the way that people, the coming off intellectual would be too boring, that it would be something, that people just would not want to hear. I understand that, the silly goofiness is what makes money here in America. Look at our entertainment. Look at our rap music. Look at our stars. I mean, goodness, look at the lifestyle of our stars, whether they're white, black, blue, or green. So I appreciate you being over here with me, Cassandra Rusky. I really, really do. But that's what an Israelite means to me. An Israelite to me is not black, right? What I'm saying is that a black can be an Israelite, right? But every person that's black is not Israel. So Israel just can't be black, which means that every person you see black would be an Israelite. Every black person that you see is not Israelite. Some of these black peoples are Satan. Some of these European people are Satan. They're adversarial people, right? So you just can't say that the Black Hebrew Israelite movement itself is the way to go simply because you got black people projecting to be Israel. They may be Israel, but the very fact that Israel is Israel, whether they white, black, or blue or green, is the reason why Israel has fallen. You understand? Because somewhere Israel had missed the point. Somewhere Israel got taken off its course in its path. Somewhere Israel became a little too focused on the mundane in contrast to Israelite spirituality. And that's the case. I mean, Israel was doing what the Canaanites wanted to do. They were doing what the Egyptians wanted to do. I remember, they told Moses, hey, what you bring us out here for? You brought us out here to kill us. Hey, they went back, hey, we going to melt all of the gold that y'all got. We going to create golden calves because this stuff Moses talked about, they want to eat you. So, an Israelite to me is just an upstanding, righteous human being, right? Who submit his life and his will to that of Abba Yahweh, of the Father, of God. That's what an Israelite is to me. Because Egypt, when the Israelites came out of Egypt, according to the Hebrew text, the scriptures say that Egypt came out with what was called Rab Arab, which is the mixed multitude. And in the Israelite law condemns us for treating the stranger amongst us as anything less than us. Okay, so I'm thinking about the scripture that I was reading in the book of Kings, and it talked about that when the children of Israel was in captivity and when they were outside of the land, that more so captivity, that they didn't have to sacrifice, that all they had to do was for the most part pray. And to have compassion. Now he telling the slave to have compassion upon the slave driver, that the slave driver may have compassion upon him. And I'm here to tell you that is the very reason why every African American is walking around here living today, because every African American was not like Nat Turner. You see what happened to Nat Turner. Nat Turner created the revolt and he ended up dead. And the crazy part about it, a lot of his own people was responsible for him coming up dead. The house Negro, right? And some of the scared field Negro, right? So this stuff is not about race as much as it is about truth. It's about race only in the sense that African people has been downtrodden and just obliviated out of history. I mean, when you look at history the way that history, and I'm a history major, that history is told, it would made it that appear that we was created on the slave ships. And anything before that, there's really no real documented history on it, considering the fact that Africa had a rich oral history passed down by griots. So they didn't have a strong history that survived up until this day. I'm talking about a strong written history that survived until this day. I mean, they do have a strong history in the books in the libraries of Quetta, Sinkere, and Timbuktu. But I mean, them books are so old, if you open up the pages, those books will start just disintegrating. So Africa, especially after 1492, I know that for certain, after Askia Muhammad, after he banned the Jews out of the kingdom of Mali, right, and the kingdom of Sankare, he banned the Israelites and the Jews, and a lot of the writings that were in the universities of Timbuktu, Sankare, Quetta was written in Phoenician Hebrew, in Arabic. You see, in the many different languages of the Berbers, right? You got to look at words like the Amizag, right? Berber, That is a Phoenician Hebrew term, people. And the Izaga is another term. But I'll get off into that on another video. I got to have saved content for other videos. So I got more content. So an Israelite is not a big black man standing on a corner with a horn, a bullhorn, hollering, yelling, disrespecting God's children that walks by. An Israelite is one who has compassion, right? Even for his enemies. And this is something that I am learning. You see, the so-called One West movements has misled us to believe that we are supposed to be this aggressive brute. And that's not the case, because all we have to do is tell the truth, right? And preach the truth in the righteousness, and let the Most High become the judge. You are not the judge. All you have to do is preach righteousness, holiness, and the truth. You know what I'm saying? And all sin, all racism, all crime, all hatredness, you know, all wickedness is all sin is just going to cease. It's going to fold. It is so easy and so blessed to do good and to do right. I don't want to be bad no more. I don't want to be a bad boy no more. My hand has been spanked and whooped. I want to get the best out of life. You can't get the best out of life while you're constantly producing negativity. You know, you plant a seed. You know, this is what I mean. You get what you plant. You know, you reap what you sow. You know, you just can't continue to reap goodness when you're sowing wickedness and evil all in the planet Earth. I'm just thinking about this song that Lionel Richie made, where he said, "Love shall conquer all." And I believe that. I'm thinking about this song that Talib Kweli wrote, where he said, "Just to get by." We think about all of the slick and conniving things that people and human beings to get by, but all you really need is love just to get by. That being that, I am going to get ready to wrap this up. Cassandra Rusky, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? This now I'm opening it up for question and answer, where I can interact with my audience, strictly them. You know, any of the audience have any questions or answer that they would like for me to answer? Yes, yes. I mean, what have I had to gain? I mean, man, I have met all types of stars, even in the Israelite movement. You say, no, you're working? Oh, okay, cool, cool. I've met everybody in Israel. Everything. I'm gonna tell you what I've got to gain in my lifetime, and it all happened when I was following the God aspect, as opposed to the satanic aspect that Satan had snared and prepared for me. God had a God aspect prepared for me, and Satan had a satanic aspect prepared for me. And I noticed that when I went from either poles, you know, I noticed that I got what I deserved in doing that, you know. So yeah, you know, that's what I'm about. I'm about, you know, about just making this place a better place for us all. And I believe that through knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, you know what I'm saying, and love, you know, I believe that that will conquer all. Yes, there's wickedness, but I believe from the bottom of my heart that positivity is at least 7 times greater than negativity. I believe that positive energy produces 7 times more effective results than negativity. I believe it is just that much more powerful. I believe that negativity is wrong, is bad. And a lot of times we just have to go out of our own natural way. Mind you, I say natural, quote unquote. way to be bad, wicked, and evil. When we promote love, righteousness, truth in the world, believe it or not, that prolongs lives. Just look at the stress of negativity. Do you know that when you holler, get upset, do you know especially when you get 40, 50 years old, 60 years old, you can get so upset, just like an argumentative upset, that you can actually have a heart attack and kill yourself. Sandra Ruske say experience is a wonderful teacher, and your desire to understand is blessed by God, brother. Hallelujah. Toda Yahweh. Anio Hibu Yahweh. Toda Yahweh. I said, Lord, I love you and I thank you. Hey, I'm just enjoying this YouTube thing. And I believe that we're going to be able to cover a whole lot of ground and territory now that I'm going to take this channel to a new direction. All of that street stuff, all of that old, what they call it, hyper masculinity, and all of that crazy stuff, man. I'm just going to do away with that, and I'm just going to focus on just giving God's gift that he gave to me to you all. That being stated, I want to say, hey, I thank you. I appreciate every one of you that have took the precious moments, minutes, and hours up out of your life just to come over here with Yasha Ben Israel, also known as Terry Whitfield. That being stated, shalom, shalom.